All right, well, everybody, welcome. Welcome to the Mobberly Complete Street public meeting. This is the second meeting in our series of community involvement meetings. So very glad you're happy to join us tonight. For the benefit of those who were not at the first meeting, basically what the project is in a nutshell, it's a complete street project on Mobberly Avenue, kind of starting down there at High Street and running north to East Pacific Avenue, kind of along that rail station. And what we're trying to do with the project is we're going to propose a new road overlay and lane reconfiguration in an effort to get a dedicated bike lane and more sidewalks in order to really enhance pedestrian mobility along the corridor. The project is municipal bond funded primarily through the Proposition B initiative. We've also got awarded a TxDOT grant for some additional funds to the project under their transportation alternatives program. So we're really excited about that. It's good news. Sometimes it could be a competitive grant to get. This is kind of the project schedule in a nutshell. This is probably going to be about a 3 to 4 year process. Right now, we are kind of right in the middle of the study and report phase. This is kind of where we're focusing the bulk of our community involvement meetings. This phase it started earlier this year in the spring, and it's probably going to run up until the spring of next year, where we're really just kind of evaluating alternatives and kind of developing concepts for the road corridor itself. We're going to move in the preliminary design phase after that, kind of in the spring of 2022, where we'll look to kind of take our design concepts and kind of look at implementing them along the corridor. And that will probably take up until the fall of 2022. And then after that, we start putting together our construction documents kind of at the end of 2022 and really looking to get this thing out for bid for contractors, the summer of 2023. And you're probably looking at about a year-long construction period where the project might get built around November of 2024. So I'd mentioned this is the next in our series of public meetings. We actually had a public meeting earlier. It was an in-person open house. We actually had it twice on 2 occasions where we invited people to come, look at the corridor maps and talk with us about the project. If you were not able to make that meeting, we actually have a recording of the presentation. It's posted on the city's project website at the link below. That website for the project basically has all of the relevant information related to the project, all the presentations, public involvement meetings such as that one. The recording for this meeting is going to be on there after tonight. And so it's a good place to go check out information about the project. Another part of our public involvement process is really, we've got an online survey that we're asking citizens to fill out. And basically what we're doing is we're asking you guys to give us input, things, we've got to map things. How you use Mobberly? What's your relationship to the corridor? What are some issues that you currently see along Mobberly Avenue? We also ask you to kind of weigh in and prioritize some of the streetscape enhancement elements like street trees and site furnishings and things like that, just to kind of get an indication for what people might want to see as part of the project. So the survey is actually still open, and we're still soliciting feedback. You can find the survey at the project website. It's on that website as well. So right now, just kind of looking at a snapshot to date, I think we've probably had a little over 100 people check out the survey. Probably about half that actually filled out responses. But just kind of summarizing what we've heard so far, we asked you, the citizens, we asked kind of what were important things to you? What were things that we would want to consider, adding as part of this Mobberly Avenue project? And so we gave you a list of things, improved traffic control, additional lighting, crosswalks, wider sidewalks, street trees. And so far, if you look at that pie chart, additional lighting is kind of identified as the biggest need on Mobberly by you guys. And then a close second would be the need for street trees. And so that was some good information we've received. Another part of the survey is a mapping exercise where we actually have an aerial map of the proposed project limits, and we just kind of ask you to put pins on the map. Where do you think the needs are? Where do you think some of the issues are? And it was a good exercise. Some of the key takeaways of that so far is, some folks identified that maybe they would like to see some site furnishings near the Young Street intersection. We learned that there's a few people that like to bike to South Ward Community Park. Definitely we heard multiple times people want more street trees. And then we saw that there were some safety concerns, in that east side of Mobberly between Melton and Timpson. So good information. We hope, you guys can keep adding to that so we can really get a good database of feedback for us to take into the design phase. So why are we asking you questions about what you might want to see added to the project? That this is a complete street project, which the primary goal of a complete street project is the enhancement of pedestrian mobility along a road, and bike lanes, sidewalks. Those are given on projects like this. But it's one thing to provide those, but we want to make it usable. We want people to want to use the bike lanes. We want people to want to walk on the sidewalks. So we employ various urban design strategies to make these complete street projects more successful. We want to make it comfortable. We want to make it attractive for people to be there. We want to make it economically viable and be able to attract some outside development interest. So just starting right now in the process, we're evaluating a lot of things and developing different alternatives for how we approach different things. And so looking at the public involvement and really identifying the key areas that we want to focus in, street trees, that was a high priority item on the list. So right now we're in the process of just kind of evaluating on how we want to do that. And so obviously where we've got a parkway strip from the back of curb to the sidewalk, if that's less than 4 feet, we're not going to be able to put street trees there. But if we got a good 4 foot or greater space, then that would be a primary area where we'll look to put street trees, and really starting to look how, how we arrange these street trees. Do we go with a more traditional uniform spacing, or do we want to look at employing a clustering strategy? We're evaluating species. Tree plantings and open space is one thing. Roadways are a very different environment. They're very harsh on trees. So we really have to be careful with our species selection to make sure that we're selecting the right trees for Mobberly. We want to make sure that they are pollutant tolerant, and we want to make sure that they're native and adaptive trees that would do well in East Texas. Another thing that we're starting to look at a result of the survey, additional lighting was the number one thing that people brought up a concern about. And so we actually observed some areas of the corridor at night and actually found that there were a lot of lights that were just not functional. And so repairing or replacing, lights that are out or broken lights, we could definitely have as part of the project scope. Maybe we can look to do additional street lights and added poles around the intersections, and maybe where we've got special areas where we think it would benefit, we could look at maybe putting a couple of pedestrian lights at those limited locations. So complete streets. This is Kevin St. Jakes. He's our complete street expert. He's going to take you through the next series of slides.
Thank you, Matt. Yeah, when we talk about complete streets, we want to be sure we're all talking from the same page. So in general, over the history of developing our streets, we've become very auto-oriented. And so there was a movement a few years ago to kind of make the streets more complete for everybody to use. So they're streets that are safe and comfortable and convenient for travel for everyone, bikes and peds and motorists and deliveries and all sorts of things that have to go on our public streets. We're just trying to get everything in balance. We've got quite an investment in our public right of way. We want to make sure that they serve everybody. Next slide. Along a corridor, we settled on this one lane each direction with a center turn lane and bike lanes as a standard treatment. We've got some very unique intersections to work with up and down Mobberly. One of them is at Young Street. The crossing there has a very unique design, very auto-oriented the design, but it's got some things going on with it. We can actually make it work better with our proposed design. You know, this intersection right now up and down Mobberly does not have a left turn lane. And by reorienting the lanes as we will be doing, we will be adding a left turn lane at the intersection of Mobberly for turning onto Young. And so we also looked at these kind of directional right turn lanes, and it eats up a lot of real estate, really for a very auto-oriented function. So we are going to be converting these over to make them more in tune and in balance with the overall mobility needs of this intersection. Next slide. So functionally on the left-hand side of the screen shows our concept for reworking this corridor. North is to the left of the screen. So if you orient yourself, there's gas station up on that north east corner, or northwest corner, sorry. And kind of a high, the right turns are kind of on the opposite corners. We're going to convert those right turn areas into kind of a more a gathering spot for folks to gather up as they get ready to cross the street. Make it a little more attractive also for motorists as they drive up and down the street. So it'll be very good treatment. Right turn lanes and left turn lanes on the approaches on Mobberly will make that all the traffic flow very smoothly through the intersection. The bicyclists, where we have them in a buffered bike lane to the south of here, we are going to, at the intersection, bring the buffered bike lane users over into the pedestrian realm over on the right-hand side as we approach the intersection. And the channelization will be to keep the bicyclists to the left and the pedestrians to the right. And going through the intersections, the bicyclists will have their own green-colored crosswalk. So they will know to channelize themselves into the buffered bike lane on the other side of the intersection. The pedestrians will have that colorized, texturized crosswalk to denote where they're crossing. And the map has all sorts of cool ideas for how to enhance the landscape around the corner.
Yes, so Kevin mentioned, those right turn lanes, being separate. They eat up a lot of real estate. Doing something like this to clean up the intersection, it really provides us with the opportunity to kind of create some additional spaces along here. So right now we're looking at some options on how we can do that, how we can kind of create these little parklets, not really so much to make them destinations, but really just to make them, a more pleasant resting spot for people, using the nearby businesses or, just passing through. And so obviously the way the intersection is laid out, we don't really have enough space to do anything on the northeast and southwest corners, but we do on the other two corners. And so we're looking at some ways to do that. The concept that you see on the screen now, it's kind of a little urban plaza approach where we can kind of create these little plazas. We could put some site furnishings that people are wanting to see here. We would definitely use decorative pavement to kind of delineate where the travel is for the cyclists and the ped foot, and then the plazas would have some decorative banding to kind of tie in with that. We would also look to put some additional street trees in this area, as well as some low seat walls. We've got this great entry. I don't know if everybody was a part of that process, but we've got a great entry monument that's about to start construction at the very entry of High and Mobberly. And so we could do some things with these seat walls that'll kind of tie in with the architectural elements of that entry wall too, to kind of bring that unifying element to the corridor. So, you could see some images on, what some things like that look like. So we're pretty excited about the opportunity this presents. And we're looking at options to make this a really cool space. And so this option, it's really from the traffic and the pedestrian transportation standpoint, it's exactly the same. We're not really looking at options for how we're doing that, but looking at different options for how we're creating the parklet. The one that you saw before was more of an urban plaza approach. Uh, this sketch shows an idea of how we could do maybe a more traditional green park approach, where instead of a lot of pavements, we can use a lot of turf grass, some trees, and maybe we can get some cool decorative mounding, in these extra triangle areas with some benches that go around. And again, this will go a long way in just kind of making these little cool spaces for passerbys and for people using the adjacent businesses.
So our typical section, you've seen this at our public meeting #1, and we're looking at this footprint and where it applies itself up and down the corridor. When we get to the intersections, there is unique opportunities, just as we see there at Young Street, opportunities to maybe install a right turn lane if we really need a right turn lane at that intersection. And maybe even bring the bikes off and share the ped space going through the intersection as we did at Young Street. So we're looking at all these applications up and down this corridor, see what is the best treatment, what is the safest treatment to install for all users of the roadway. And some of our very specific treatments we're looking at are an area just north of Young Street that has a bit of a terrain on the east side of the street to work with. So working in the concepts that we would be showing to everybody, trying to get those fleshed out so that we have thought of all the details and really working them to the advantage of everybody, adjacent landowners, pedestrians, bicyclists, and motorists as well. Matt, any other thoughts on this particular section that we have?
No, I think the big thing here is addressing some of those accessibility issues on the east side. It's going to require a retaining wall, most likely, and a guardrail, to kind of help with
fencing,
fall protection. So
right, and railing to keep the pedestrians safe up in their higher elevation. Next slide. And of course, when we get to where we have more space along that the east side of the roadway, specifically over in front of Laterno, we've got some opportunities to have a wider space, a meandering trail, even perhaps up and down, working with some of the terrain and adding trees and landscaping along those edges. Those opportunities are available for any area up and down the corridor. Actually, if we want to. If landowners want to work with something on their side of the right of way to enhance the trail or the sidewalks along that edge, we're more than open to opportunities to do that. And so we've got a lot of mapping that we're preparing. A lot of these are posted up on our website now. If you can go to the longviewtexas.gov/complete street, you'll find all of our maps of the corridor alignment as they are now, and we will keep updating those and keep checking on them and see how they're coming along on the concepts. We'll be very open for you as far as sharing all the information as we develop it. And the same goes for parking. Parking, as you know, is pretty prevalent up and down this corridor. There's a lot of different configurations of pull-in and things that are encroaching on the sidewalks. And so we want to make the pedestrian experience up and down this corridor as enjoyable and clear as possible, while maintaining the business needs of parking for them. So we're collaborating with each individual property owner up and down the corridor. We've got some very interesting things to work with, maybe even working in some angle parking and reverse angle parking up near some of the park area near the school. A lot of things that we're coming up with ideas, and we'll be sharing them as we go. Bob Watson with the city is reaching out to individual property owners for some of the more complicated parking configurations and reconfigurations. And if you have concerns or thoughts about how things should be done, give Bob a call and let him know that you'd like to have a chat.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for attending. Really appreciate you being here. I mentioned early the the survey is still open, so please fill that out if you haven't done so yet. It will remain open until December 31st, and then we're going to close the survey for input, and it's going to be no longer available to take. So please pass that information along. It can be found at the project website, or you can hit this QR code right there. Last thing, just before everybody goes, we are really excited. Our next community event, we're actually going to break from the traditional structure of a PowerPoint presentation and really just kind of do something on site. So we're really excited about this. We're calling it our mock traffic event. And what we're doing is we're going to put up temporary bike lane configurations along one block of Mobberly. It's going to be in the section between Oakdale Avenue and Merle. And this configuration is going to be left up from January 14th to January 31st. So people kind of try it out and kind of see how a bike lane would work in that area. We are going to have an event that Saturday, the 15th, where we're going to be there on site, with a table and some exhibits, and we'll be there to answer any questions or any concerns that you might have there. So hopefully we'll see you there. Thanks for coming out tonight. Really appreciate it. And everybody have a good night.